Many thanks to Vicky for inviting me as representative of Nordoff Robbins to this very exciting event. I'm hearing all the things that the university and the research department are doing, how many links there are at so many levels with music and health, and all the research happening there on international level as well. That's excellent to hear that. Obviously, I'm not going to be just talking to you about music therapy and Nordoff Robbins. I'm going to be showing you a brief example as well, which will hopefully illuminate a little bit what music therapy can be. So let's just get going. As Vicky said, Nordoff Robbins is actually the largest music charity working across the UK with music and health. I mean, there are many, many different charities, and the whole spectrum of what's often called music and health organisations is broadening all the time, with people investigating different ways that music can be used to transform lives at many different levels. But Nordoff Robbins has been going since the early 70s, as it says there, working on transforming lives of children and adults constrained by illness, disability, trauma and isolation, and importantness through the inherent power of music. And Vicky said a little bit about that, and I'll talk a bit more about that, and you'll see some of that illustrated over the next 20 minutes. Paul Nordoff and Clive Robbins began working together in the early 60s. Clive Robbins was a musician who had ended up working as an educationalist in a residential school for children with special needs, as we would now say. Paul Nordoff was an American pianist and composer. They met whilst Paul was touring around the UK. He was hawking his compositions around, actually, to no great success, but when he met Paul, he was also, Clive, he was very interested to see how music that Clive was doing with the children wasn't just distracting them or entertaining them, but by responding to the way that the children responded to the music, a kind of non-verbal communication started to be developed, which actually started to result in measurable changes to the children that are being worked with. So out of those little seeds came Nordoff Robbins music therapy, as it would now be called, the work that they did for the next 10 years, going all around Europe and the Eastern United States, working with thousands of, at that stage, just children. And the Nordoff Robbins Music Therapy charity was started in the early 70s after their work had come to its natural end as a partnership to expand what we now call the music services, music therapy services of Nordoff Robbins, continue the research that they were doing, and to train music therapists of the future. And Nordoff Robbins has been offering training of music therapists since the early 70s. We now offer a range of specialist music therapeutic services, as it says there, including music therapy itself, what you might call music and health projects, community music projects. Our head office is based in North East London, where we have a music therapy centre, also in Croydon. But about 10 years ago, to start to really try to branch out across the UK, Nordoff Robbins North was set up. And now we have about 14, 15 music therapists working in Yorkshire and also on the other side, on the dark side of the Pennines, working in dementia care settings, special needs schools, hospitals. We actually have a music therapist who works a day a week with funded by Click Sargent here in the Children's Hospital in Sheffield for a day a week in the oncology ward. And we also are running the only music therapist training course, which are all postgraduate courses, 2-year MAs, hosted by the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester. And because we're the only training course for music therapists between Scotland and the South East, we have students that come from Yorkshire, from the North East even, and across the west side of the Pennines into North Wales. To find out more about the research that we're doing, you can always have a look at the website, and got lost on that. Now, taking broader than Nordoff Robbins as an organisation, but to music therapists, where do we work? Well, as I said, yes, we work in education, mainly special needs schools, but we do also work in the inclusion units or special educational need units of mainstream schools as well. Health services, psychiatric settings, neuro rehab, adults and children with learning disabilities, in NHS or private settings. Social services, obviously, as Vicky mentioned, as you all know, music is very well suited to fit itself round whatever context it finds itself in and whatever context the people that music needs to be brought to are in, which could well be in day centres, in community centres, in residential homes, and in the non-statutory sector we work in hospices, some mind associations, in our actual, for us, our Nordoff Robbins centres. We don't have one in the north, there's just two in the south at the moment. In north, it tends to be in partner organisations, as we would call it, and with other charities as well, such as CLIC. Could you just give me a show of hands? Who would say that they know anything about what music therapy is? Could you put your hand up if you think you have some idea what music therapy is? Put your hand up if you have ever seen a music therapy session. Ah, excellent. Well, in a music therapy session, the bottom line of a music therapist's approach is that to be a human being is to be a musical being. Without going into too much detail at this point, we would say that all human beings have the capacity to interact in musical ways irrespective of age, from newborn infants right up to the oldest, disability, race, culture, anything you'd care to mention. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single person will at every moment in time, as Vicky mentioned. Music is not a panacea that can be for everybody at all times, but everybody has the capacity and the innate ability to interact in musical ways. We do it all the time, whether we realise it or not. Therefore, in a session, musical participation rather than talking, there are psychotherapeutic, psychodynamic approaches to music therapy which make more use of talking about the music that you've made where that's possible with the client. Nordoff Robbins music therapy tends to focus more on the therapeutic process happening as you make music together, irrespective of the cognitive ability of the person you happen to be working with. Therefore, both the client and the music therapist are musically active. One could spend hours unpacking what that might mean, but just to give it that summary. And what happens is that there is an integration of the client's musical responses or musical gestures, as we would say, into the co-created music. In other words, we are making music together, enabling musical communication even when verbal communication is disrupted, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Generally, wherever possible, the sessions are recorded, either audio or video recorded, which enables us to go back over the session, analyse what was happening, look for significant moments, formulate therapeutic aims and goals, monitor progress. It's very important to understand that music therapy became recognised as an effective therapeutic intervention in the late 90s after years and years of research and evidence being presented to the Health and Care Professions Council, which put it on a footing with speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, all these other health-related disciplines. What that means is that lots of people work therapeutically with music, and as Vicky mentioned, all of us use music in therapeutic ways as part of our regular lives anyway. But all that means is that you cannot say that you are a music therapist unless you've been through one of the postgraduate courses, and you have to have supervision and regular CPD and all that kind of thing. There is basically an improvisational attitude underlying the music. You're not just presenting a ready-made piece to a client, they can take it or leave it. It's something that is flexibly moulded around what the client brings to the session and what their needs are and how music can be brought to address those. And that, therefore, can mean that you can work with individuals on a one-to-one basis, sometimes groups. This could lead to performances, wherever the therapeutic goals lead, wherever the music leads, wherever the client leads, that is where the music therapy will lead. And the bottom line really is that music therapy works in the same way that all music works. The inherent power of music in all its different subtleties is what is being harnessed in very specific ways by music therapists to achieve particular results in a particular case. Now, going to go straight now to an example. Devon is a young boy aged about 8, who I have worked with for several years. He has profound and multiple learning disabilities. He has from birth, he's had no speech. He is entirely, has to stay in his wheelchair all the time. He is fed with tubes and has to have his nutrition that way. He has very little understanding of language, but very good understanding of mood, and will often react very closely to somebody who's coming near to him with different sorts of expressions or different tones of voice. So he's very aware, but he doesn't have or understand language as such. Of course, as we know, in music, vocal communication is possible without needing to have words and be turned into a song. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to describe some of what you will hear to sort of flag your ears up a bit, and then I'll play the short 2-minute clip extract from a session that I had with Devon just a couple of months ago. What you will hear, and it's taken from the very beginning of the session, is Devon's anticipation of what is about to come and his engagement in the musical interaction that we're about to share together. I want you to listen out for the gently pulsing and flexible piano accompaniments that I put underneath Devon. You won't be able to see his breathing, but basically the speed that I'm playing is related to the speed that he's breathing to give him that sense of connection with the music right from the outset. You'll hear the way that he vocalizes and how the vocalizing, that's to say, just sounds made with the human voice, makes that subtle shift from a vocalization to singing, meaning an intentionally musical vocalizing. And you'll see how I respond to them. I can tell you a little bit more about that after you've heard the clip. And I'm using musical techniques, therefore, to help Devon control his vocalizations, give them additional meaning, and co-create something together. Now, so we don't have opportunity for questions at this time, but I'll be very glad to speak to any of you afterwards. I'm going to play it again in a minute because, as music therapists, what we're doing is really listening very, very closely to the musical gestures and the musical communication that's coming from the client, packaging that up into a musical format, which will obviously be different depending on the therapist. I'm predominantly a pianist and a singer, or I play clarinet and a few other bits and bobs as well. So I will be accompanying, with a capital A, accompanying Devon as a person as well as a musician in my way as a pianist. If I was a guitarist, I would be bringing very different sorts of music, and music therapists will all be working the detail with very different. You could go into 2 music therapy sessions and the aims, you could look at them beforehand and go, well, they were the same aims with a very similar sort of clients, but the music was completely different. And as Vicky mentioned, this is one classic example of how music is not like a medicine that you can prescribe. You know, listen to 6 bars of Brahms 3 times a day and you'll feel better. This is a very subtle human interaction, but done in a very systematic way. I'll play the clip again, and now you've heard it once and you've got a little flavour for Devon and the way he is in music. Listen again for the way in which his vocalisations become musical. You may have heard how it suddenly, you probably noticed that it was suddenly pitched about halfway through. This was the beginning of about a 15-minute session, and then he became too tired and we had to bring it to an end. But there are so many things that I could tell you about what music means to Devon in terms of his family use it in this same sort of way. They put opera on and he responds like with such enthusiasm. People sing to him, he sings back. They've now been able to more and more use non-verbal music in the way that I'm doing to encourage him to communicate with the world around him, bringing a recognition that communication does not have to include words. Anybody can vocalise to Devon if they just get over sometimes their own feelings of self-consciousness, and he will immediately respond in kind. And something that we do often is working not just with clients, but with families and with staff to help other people who are working with the same clients discover more of their own musicality that is often unrecognised. Classic British thing, oh, I can't sing. And what I often say to people is, I think you mean that nobody would pay to hear you sing. That may be true, but that's not the same thing. Do you sing in the car? Do you sing in the bath? Do you hum along to karaoke tunes if you're sitting in a pub and it's going on? Yes, you sing. So bringing out those latent abilities in other people rather than just focusing entirely on the client. It's the ecological context that they're working in. So I think my time is coming towards an end, so I will show you Devon one last time, and then I think it's time to move on to the next speaker, to the piano. Devon. Thank you all for listening. Look forward to speaking to some of you afterwards. And obviously, for any more information about Nordoff Robbins, do look on our website. You've got the details of my email address. I'll be happy to have any email correspondence with anyone if you want to know more about music therapy or about the work of Nordoff Robbins. But thank you all for listening, and it's great to be here.